Now you can. Okay, great. I should have worn some heels. I keep forgetting how tall I am. But in any case, I'm Florencia Spangaro. I'm the Director of Programs at the Citi Foundation, and I'm delighted to welcome all of you to Investing Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow, where we're going to be focusing and taking a deep dive around financing. We know that without adequate financing, cities across the world will find it nearly impossible to achieve their climate commitments. They will not be able to play their part in the creation of a sustainable and resilient world we all wish to seek to see. This is why today's session and the work of C40 and its member cities in the area is so important. Over the next hour or so, we're going to be hearing from across the C40 City Finance Program on the challenges cities are facing and the innovative and scalable solutions being implemented as a result. We're going to be hearing about C40's peer-to-peer and technical program, including the Financing Sustainable Cities Initiative, the work being done on project preparation and capacity building through the finance facility, and the work of the Divest Invest Forum. At the Citi Foundation, we recognize the scale of the financing challenge and the barrier that this presents to cities to achieve their ambitious climate goals. This is why we have been a long-term supporter of C40, especially the Financing Sustainable Cities Initiative, where we have invested nearly $5 million over the last couple years alone. We're encouraged by the achievements of the cities participating in this program and the other financing programs at C40, and we remain committed to playing our part through philanthropy to further inclusive climate action. So with that, let's get this session started. Oh my God, I'm stumbling on my words. And to introduce our panel, I'm delighted to welcome on stage our moderator, Kate Hughes, Director for International Climate and Energy for the UK government. Thank you and welcome.
Thanks very much. Hi everyone, and welcome to this session. You have picked wisely, because I really think this is going to be the most exciting session of the day, because it really is about the choices that we're making today, about how we design cities, we plan them, we shape them, we build them, we live in them. Those decisions we're making today are going to impact our ability to meet the Paris goals, to meet net zero, and so to look after the health, the well-being, the safety, the economic prosperity of our cities and our people. But we know that the financing is the critical issue here. We've heard over the course of our time here, all of the incredible things that we can do. But if we don't get the financing right, those things aren't going to happen. And I know many people, have been talking to you about the scale of the challenge. But just to put it into context as well, these are the stats that kind of motivate me, but also slightly terrify me as well. Which is, first of all, that over the next 15 years, infrastructure globally is going to double. Now, if you look around just at Copenhagen, the amount of building that's going on here, and if you came from the airport or you came from wherever and you walked from Central Station, you'll have seen just even here the scale of that infrastructure. And the amount of built infrastructure is going to double, and that's going to cost us $90 trillion over the next 15 years. Over the next 20 years, the global economy is going to double. And over the next 40 years, the world's urban population is going to double. And all of that growth is going on, and we don't even just need to keep emissions stable during that time. We need to halve them. So that just gives you a sense of the divergence of where we're going between the growth of infrastructure and our urban populations and what we need to be doing on emissions. And the decisions that are shaping that growth are happening right now. We need the financing to match and support those ambitions. Recent findings from the report on the Coalition for Urban Transitions, which we were really pleased to be involved in from the UK government, show that implementing low-carbon solutions for cities could be worth $24 trillion by 2050. And the World Bank found that investing $1 trillion in just the incremental cost of making infrastructure more resilient in developing countries could generate $4.2 trillion in benefits. So it's out there, but it isn't happening. It's not happening at the scale and the speed that we need it to. And that's because there are barriers there. It's complex. But we know it can be done, and that's what we're going to hear about today. The examples of where this is happening and how we can learn from that, the tools that are at our disposal and how we can sort of use those different levers. And in order to try and make this transition work and to happen faster, the UK government is raising its ambition. We have legislated for net zero so that we're setting that policy framework. And we recently announced that we are doubling our climate finance to £11.6 billion to help support these transitions. And we've doubled our contribution as well to the Green Climate Fund. And we're particularly proud to be part of the C40 network and to be supporting their work through our £27.5 million Climate Leadership in Cities programme, which is supporting some of the world's largest cities to implement ambitious climate action projects. We're supporting the C40 Climate Action Planning, the Coalition for Urban Transitions, and critically here today, the C40 Cities Financing Facility, which is helping cities to facilitate access and get access to the finance that is out there for mitigation projects, for adaptation, and providing that support, that technical assistance to turn those projects, those ideas, into actual bankable proposals that happen. So we're supporting 16 projects in 15 cities across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, including in the cities that we're going to hear about today. We've got a great panel of mayors, city officials across different geographies, also bringing different perspectives of divesting and investing as well. So we're really excited about that. And I just wanted to also share with you, because if you've walked around the streets of Copenhagen, as I have recently, you'll know that cycling is a huge thing here. We're working, for example, in a city in South Africa called Tshwane, with two very different projects, just to show the kind of the difference of the examples that we're doing. So there, we're developing one project which is about developing a bicycle spine route to actually help connect two areas, one of, a poorer population into the area where there are the economic opportunities, so that people can travel from their homes to try and get jobs. And we're making it more socially acceptable and making it safer for people to use that. And at the other end of the spectrum, we're also helping to prepare the financing plans for a combined heat and power biogas plant at one of the city's wastewater treatment works and getting the financing right from that. And the exciting thing about all of this is that these set up funding models that can be replicated and understood and rolled out to other places. And that's what's exciting about this, that actually we can start to see that real shift. So we're starting to respond to that investment challenge. We're really excited to have a great panel here today. Let me introduce them to you. We're going to take some questions, we're going to have a little bit of a session here, and then we're really looking forward to your questions as well, which I understand are already rolling in. So keep those coming, and we will try and take some of those in the session. So please let me welcome up for you Abdallah Mtinika, who is the Deputy Mayor of Dar es Salaam. Mbacké Seck, who is the Deputy Mayor of Dakar. Reece, who's a Councillor of Melbourne. And Dorsey, who's Executive Director of the Wallace Global Fund and a key funder of the Divest Invest Forum. And we have some translators up here with us as well today to help us run this session and to be inclusive. So let me kick off. We've got a few questions just to get the conversation going here. Abdallah, maybe I can turn to you first, because what's going on in Dar es Salaam is really exciting. And I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about what are those challenges that you're facing when you're trying to finance sustainable infrastructure and turn those projects into reality. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Yes, hi. My name is Abdallah Mtinika, as I've been introduced, and I'm a deputy mayor from the Dar es Salaam City Council. And if anyone know about Dar es Salaam here, maybe I can know if I have friends here. Dar es Salaam is a city, it's near Zanzibar. If you know Zanzibar, near Dar es Salaam. I know many of you know about Zanzibar, is it? Yeah, thank you, and I'm happy to attend this meeting. I'm also a young leader, and I know I'm encouraging other young people here also to be a leader like me. I started when I was very young. Therefore, according to the questions, Dar es Salaam, like other Africa cities, we have a lot of challenges, but before going to that, I'd like to thank the C40. Is doing a great job there. They are financing the Msimbazi River, which is crossing the Dar es Salaam city to the ocean. The river is mostly flooding, small rain, but heavy flood. But the C40 now is doing a good job of modifying that river bank, that maybe we can't see the flood again. As a municipal, as you know, African countries, let me be open. African countries, we got independence, maybe it is about 50 years now. Compared to the other European countries. Therefore, for the short time, we are doing a lot of jobs, a lot of works. I know, for example, the city like New York, now maybe you don't build the schools because you have schools. You don't build the health service because you have them. But in our city, we are doing everything. We are making schools. Therefore, the amount we have is very little. And even the awareness sometimes of people that they have to pay, and if they pay, that we made this and this. Therefore, that's the challenge, and we are continuing educating our people to pay. But even if they pay, but the challenges we are facing are so many, which compared to the budget we have. And that's the challenge. I know maybe I can hear also from the other representatives from other city, but I'd like to encourage and to invite the donors to come and help us, because Dar es Salaam is the #1 fastest growing city in Africa. That is according to UN Habitat. Yes, it's true. And the population is about 4.4 million now, and every day there's people are coming to Dar es Salaam city from the village. That urbanization is very high, and then the plans we are making sometimes we can't reach the goal quickly and early, and the challenge are so many. And the people, for example, I'm a deputy mayor. I can wake up, I wake up early in the morning, and you see the people outside the house or outside the office need services, various services. Even if someone can say, maybe my son is not going to school because of lack of school fees. Okay, you have to think about that. And the people, there are floods, you have to think about flood. You have to think about health service. Therefore, for us leaders from Africa's countries and African cities, we are doing so many things. And I know we are here, we are exchanging ideas, and now we are improving. Now we are trying to improve, but the problems, the budget is very low compared to the challenges we have. Thank you very much. Maybe that's I can say about.
Yeah, thank you. And it was really good to get your insight into some of those challenges and what it feels like to be living there. And, great. I think we've all learned something as well about the speed of growth that you're facing, which is a huge challenge as well. And hopefully we'll come back to some of this in the questions later. Maybe, Mamadou, I could pass to you to give your experiences of Dakar, and how is your administration overcoming those challenges and trying to attract investment into your city? What does that look like, and what are the barriers and what are the opportunities that you're seeing?
Merci. Je suis heureux d'avoir deux personnes qui m'aident à bien m'exprimer et à comprendre. Merci pour cette facilité dans l'organisation.
I'm very happy to have two interpreters with me who can help me understand everything. So I want to thank you for that.
Je viens de Dakar. Dakar est la capitale la plus à l'ouest de l'Afrique, qui est à l'intérieur de l'océan Pacifique, dans une péninsule.
I am from Dakar, which is the country at the westernmost point of Africa, and the city is located on a peninsula.
La ville est entourée des trois côtés par la mer.
We're surrounded by the sea on all three sides.
Est située dans une région qu'on appelait le Cap Vert.
and we are in a region that we call the Green Cape.
Aujourd'hui, c'est plus un cap vert, c'est un cap de béton. Nous avons du béton partout.
But it's no longer a green cape, it's a concrete cape. There is concrete everywhere now.
Vous comprenez que cette ville est aussi vulnérable au changement climatique à cause de l'avancée de la mer.
So you will also understand that this city is vulnerable to climate change due to its close proximity to the ocean.
Mon ami de Dar es Salaam disait que Dar es Salaam est la ville qui grandit, qui s'accroît le plus rapidement en Afrique, mais il faut qu'il se limite à l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Nous sommes la ville qui croît le plus en Afrique de l'Ouest.
My friend and colleague said before that his city is the city that's growing the fastest, but he should mention that it's on the eastern side of Africa. Our city is the fastest growing city on the western side of the continent.
Nous avons les problèmes d'accès à l'eau potable, nous avons des problèmes d'assainissement, nous avons des problèmes d'avancée de la mer, nous avons des problèmes de la qualité de l'air.
We have problems with access to drinkable water, sanitary systems, with air quality, among other things.
Pour faire face à tout cela, la ville de Dakar, sous la direction de son maire, a initié un plan climat-énergie-territoire.
To face these challenges, we have launched a program that we call the Plan Climat Énergie Territorial, so a energy plan for the territory.
Et ce plan a été adopté avec la participation des populations, des organisations de jeunesse, des organisations de femmes, sur toute l'étendue du territoire de la ville de Dakar.
And this plan was adopted by all organizations and local political institutions for the entire area of Dakar.
Il y a 2 ans, j'étais activiste, j'étais dans la rue tous les jours en train de sensibiliser les gens sur les problèmes du climat. Aujourd'hui, j'ai une position de maire pour parler au nom de cette personne. C'est un pas qualitatif que la ville de Dakar a fait dans l'écoute des citoyens dans les problèmes d'environnement.
2 years ago, I was an activist in the streets trying to make people aware of these problems. I'm now in a mayor's position with a different voice and promoting these changes and making sure that they will happen.
Aujourd'hui, parler aux populations, les impliquer, permet de prendre en charge les problèmes des changements climatiques dans notre ville.
Currently, we have the situation where we need to speak to the population and make them aware of the problems that we face, climate change and other issues.
Parce qu'une bonne partie de notre population est encore analphabète et vient directement des villages. Ils ne comprennent pas encore que la Terre est ronde. Expliquer à ces gens les changements climatiques, les faire prendre part au programme peut poser un problème.
And a large part of our population are still analphabets, and they still think that the Earth is flat or not round. And so to explain and make people aware of these problems is of course a huge challenge for us, but we are making progress.
Mais ils comprennent tous qu'il fait de plus en plus chaud.
But they all understand that it's getting hotter and hotter.
Ils comprennent tous que la période de froid est réduite, mais il fait très froid aussi.
They also understand that the period with cold weather is getting shorter and shorter, but also that we have extreme cold weather.
Ils comprennent tous qu'on a de plus en plus de zones inondées.
They also understand that we have more and more floodings.
Ils sont venus en ville parce que dans les zones rurales, il n'y a plus de pluie et l'agriculture ne nourrit pas son homme.
They have come to the city because in the countryside there's no longer any rainfall, so there's a need to move to the city.
Et ceux qui habitent les villages de pêcheurs comme moi n'ont plus de produits lorsqu'ils vont en mer et la mer commence à casser nos habitations.
And those fishermen who live in the local community where I live no longer have anything to go fishing for, and the ocean is also starting to destroy our coastal areas.
Nous ne comprenons pas les changements climatiques, mais nous vivons pleinement les effets des changements climatiques.
We don't necessarily understand the climate change and what's going on, but we certainly experience it totally where we are.
Et tous les jours, la ville de Dakar, qui forme ses agents, qui renforce la capacité des décideurs, parce qu'il faut impacter sur les personnes qui ont les décisions. La ville de Dakar travaille fortement ça pour le changement climatique.
And every day, the city of Dakar is working on making people aware of this, and also to make the decision makers aware of this, so we can start having these changes that are so important for our city.
Voilà un peu comment la ville de Dakar, à travers la formation, le renforcement des capacités et une présence de tous les jours sur le terrain, essaie de gagner ce salon sur les changements climatiques.
That is how the city of Dakar, via education, via enhancing skills, and via general spreading of knowledge, is trying to handle and tackle the challenges of the changing climate.
Les déclarations sont importantes, mais l'action importe aussi.
Declarations are important, but actions are also very important.
Et la décision avec les populations, elle est aussi importante.
And decisions with the populations are also very important.
Parce qu'un projet approprié est à moitié réussi.
Because a accepted project is a project that's already half on the way to success.
Voilà là où le conseil municipal et Madame le maire mettent comme fil conducteur de leur action.
That is what I wanted to say in my position as a deputy mayor, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for that, and for bringing the challenges to life for us and showing how this is an immediate issue now. And I loved that you were an activist on the street, and now you're helping to make those decisions. And I think those points about bringing the people with you and making those projects acceptable are hugely important in terms of financing. You've got to know that actually it's going to last, that there's both the political will but also the will of the citizens to make these things happen. And I think this brings us nicely on to you, Nick, with the sort of the perspective of Melbourne, which is in some ways incredibly different, but you're also feeling the impacts of climate change as well. And I guess I'm going to slightly abuse my position as moderator and sort of in terms of my question to you. So whilst I think it's really interesting for us to hear about why and how Melbourne committed to never invest in fossil fuels and the importance of divestment for cities, it would be also interesting, I think, to hear from you how you kind of translate that into a meaning, what that means to people in those cities. So it's not just a distant concept of divestment. In doing that, how did you bring the people of Melbourne with you?
Thanks for that, Kate. It's a great question, and I also am delighted to be here participating in this panel. You say the situation in Melbourne is different to our previous speakers, but there's many similarities as well. Melbourne is the fastest growing city in Australia. Grew by... Which you may laugh, given Australia is a relatively low population country, but grew by about 125,000 people last year. So it's not just the fastest growing city in Australia, it's actually probably the fastest growing city in the OECD. I was talking to your wonderful Mayor Frank Jensen yesterday. I was talking about how does he manage Copenhagen's growth of 10,500 people in the last year. And I was thinking, man, try timesing that by 13 and you'll see what we're dealing with in Melbourne at the moment. And so getting investment and divestment and procurement right is absolutely important when you're trying to manage growth on that scale. I'm very proud to be able to say that Melbourne has been carbon neutral since 2012, and having the city, thank you very much, and having the city divest from all fossil fuel companies as part of that commitment was central to that. But it didn't stop there, I need to emphasise, Kate. Very importantly, and in a quite inspiring way, the workers for the city were very keen to see that their retirement savings in their pension funds were not going into fossil fuel and environmental degrading organisations as well. And so starting from the City of Melbourne, but spreading across Australia, the national superannuation or pension fund for local government workers has given a commitment to divesting out of all fossil fuel companies. So that's a pension fund that manages, it's a mid-sized fund, it manages about $20 billion in assets, and they have now committed nationally to divesting from fossil fuel companies, which is very much in keeping with the ethos of the spirit of the city and the people who work for the city as well. As a very interesting aside, just a couple of weeks ago, they've also announced that they will be calling for a spill of the boards of companies which do not have at least 2 women as directors on those companies as well. So this is a way in which we are seeing finance now very much engaging socially in the social responsibility movement. Just very quickly, if I can, I've talked about divestment, but I'd also like to talk about procurement, because I think that's a very important thing for cities. And one of the most exciting and innovative things we've done in Melbourne is something we call the Melbourne Renewable Energy Program. What we did is we went round to 14 major energy consumers around the city, big organisations, and we essentially set up a group buying scheme for renewable power. The collection of 14 organisations in aggregate were able to commit to purchasing 88 gigawatts of renewable power, and that was a purchase order big enough to kickstart a new 80 megawatt wind farm in a regional area, which created 140 jobs. So it was a great job story for a regional area, which could have used an economic boost. It was a fantastic story for the city as well, in terms of moving the city to 100% renewable power. Another similar measure in that area, which we're very proud of at the City of Melbourne, is something called the Sustainable Melbourne Fund. That is essentially a loan facility which building owners can access to get long-term finance to make their buildings sustainable. And the reason why we think it's quite clever and why it's worked very well is it's low interest rate, can be paid back over a long period of time, but it gets past this split incentives dilemma that exists where a landlord invests in a capital upgrade of their building, whether it's insulation, solar panels, a number of other measures, but the tenant gets the benefits of that in terms of lower energy costs. The way this scheme is devised, the landlord can regain some of the capital costs through the lease agreement, but can pay off the loan through the rates that they pay to the city each year, and they can pay that off over a 20-year period. So that's been a very successful scheme. It's been going for a number of years now. It's invested about $30 million, and it's just been rolled over now into a $200 million scheme. It's taken about 500,000 tonnes of greenhouse gases out of our city atmosphere. So a great result for the city.
Yeah, no, those are great stories. And I think the real beauty of these is that all of the cities, we can learn lessons about what works and have that bigger, wider effect and that sharing of lessons. But it's also proving to investors that you can do things in different ways, which takes down one of those barriers. I'm desperately trying to think now as well, if I've got a growth story. I think the borough that I live in London, is possibly the fastest growing London borough, but I'm not going to go there in this competition about growth. But let's think about that. But this question about what cities can do and how they can, it's not just, I guess, the tools at their disposal in terms of the infrastructure and so on, but actually using its bigger power, whether it's on procurement, but also the assets that it owns and holds, are hugely powerful too. And Ellen, it would be great to get your views on, for cities and businesses out there which might be thinking that divesting from fossil fuels might hurt their performance, what would you say to them? And how can we work with cities on the actual sort of positive side, on the investment side, not just the divestment side?
Good afternoon. So I'm from Washington, D.C., which I can undoubtedly say is the fastest growing city in the United States, but I'm not going to tell you what it's fastest growing in. I'll let you think about that.
Human emitted noxious gases?
Noxious gases. That was a good answer. I work at a foundation, a private foundation, and we started our journey to overhaul our investments. Foundations have, endowments, investments, and then we make grants to nonprofits with a small sliver of that endowment. And that's an important part of the story, I believe. So we began overhauling our investments in 2009 to be mission aligned. And one of the first things we did was to commit to being fossil free. And we said that we would get out of fossil fuels and we would invest in climate solutions. We are fully out of fossil fuels. We're about 16% invested in climate solutions. We have impact investments in just transition issues, energy access, energy justice. We're currently working with Standing Rock to help build a grid-scale wind farm that they will own. So we're really committed to using our investments. And that's really what this is about, how we use our investments as a tool in the climate crisis. But let me just start, not just the financial issues about divestment, but let's talk about the ethical issues first. Let's be clear. If you own fossil fuels, you own climate change. Full stop. And you are complicit in the impacts of climate change. And you're also not using your assets to pressure the companies to move in the direction that we know they need to move in. In 2011, a youth movement began calling for divestment from fossil fuels, calling on institutional investors, cities, foundations like mine, across the board, pension funds, faith groups, to get out of fossil fuels as a matter of ethical imperative, because those same companies were blocking action on climate change at the government level. And in the wake of the Copenhagen global meeting failing, in the wake of legislation failing in places like the United States, the youth said it's time to turn the focus on the industry itself. And so this was an industry that spent tens of billions of dollars in denying the science, promoting misinformation, lobbying for inaction, making huge contributions to politicians to ensure that they wouldn't act. And it was time to effect change. That movement, which began less than a decade ago, 5 years ago made its first announcement that $52 billion in assets under management had been divested. Just a couple of weeks ago at the 5th anniversary, it's now 11 trillion. So this is a fast-moving movement, and mainstream investors are now committing all over the world to divestment. And the argument is that if the companies are not willing to tender a 1.5-degree plan, stop the CapEx for any further fossil fuels, then they really are rogue global actors. And I urge you to see a series in The Guardian right now, The Polluter Project, that's running incredible articles. One today, or maybe it was yesterday, researched that Shell and Exxon have projected oil and gas production increases of more than 35% between 2018 and 2030. And they're pumping out as much as they can, as fast as they can, because they know what they're up against. Cities like C40 that are moving very aggressively. So let me just say, I think divest invest for cities, for mayors, is a fundamental test of your climate leadership, and it's an absolute essential component of the Green New Deal. We've been supporting the Divest Invest Forum of C40, which is chaired by the mayors of London and New York. Both cities have committed to Divest Invest. Their teams are here in the room. And they also committed for ethical reasons. But if the ethical reasons aren't enough to convince you to divest, the financial imperative should be. Fossil fuels are the worst performing sector for the last 6 years, bar none, at the level of bonds. And in the coming years, as the technology, renewables just further eclipse fossil fuels, as governments actually begin to put a price on carbon, we can't time when, but the fossil fuel values will plummet. So as fiduciaries, you have a responsibility to be tracking that poor performance in fossil fuels and actually protect the assets of your workers. So there's a powerful ethical imperative and there's a powerful financial imperative. But it's not just about divestment. It's also about investing. And I think we've already heard some examples of this. We're actually leaving money on the table if we're not thinking about the ways that investment capital can be used as a tool to fund projects in cities all over the world, cities that have investment capital and cities that don't have investment capital or as much investment capital. So let me just say a few things. Imagine if a city pulled every endowment together based in the geographic region, universities, hospitals, foundations, pension funds, and said, let's all put 1% of our assets into a revolving green loan fund to benefit this city. And you could fund efficiency projects, resiliency projects, and you could return to the investors 2 or 3%. That would match their needs, their revenue needs for the fixed asset class of their portfolio. They get their returns, but it's going to generate more money than that, which will help fund future projects. Imagine further if C40 created a global investment vehicle for other investors to come in and co-invest with the cities, generating another whole tranche of capital for resilience, efficiency, innovation, just transition, new local food systems. And that's exactly what the Divest Invest Forum is doing. It is supporting, it's C40. It is supporting cities to look at how they can divest. Cue slide on Divest Invest Toolkit that the staff have put together that's being launched here. And so there's support, technical support for how to divest invest. And then C40 is also working on developing this investment fund that can be a way for cities to invest together in their own vitalization and climate vitalization, and other investors can co-invest, like big foundations could come in or big pension funds. So I'll just say by way of closing, I believe that the real test of climate leadership actually is whether you follow the money and whether you deploy the money. And I think mayors have a really unique opportunity to not only divest and invest, but they can go beyond that and convene other players in their city to do the same and loosen up some of that capital to do really innovative things. So just, use your investments as a critical tool, because if you want to own the future, you got to get off fossil fuels.
So thank you so much to the panel, where we've heard a huge variety of different ways in which there are the challenges, but also the opportunities, at the political level and right down to the people creating that space, and different kinds of finance, whether it's at the divest end of things through to actually how we can use those funds and the kinds of projects that we can be doing. And I think often there is this chasm between sort of a climate community and the finance community, and we need to help bring that together so they can share a language and can talk to each other to make those investments a reality. And I think that's partly what the C40 is helping to do here, because actually we're all sharing the impacts. We're sharing the experience of climate change, so we need to be sharing that language to make things happen. So I'm hoping that you've listened to what we've been saying, and you've been sending in questions, and hopefully now, by the magic of some amazing digital technology, some of those will start to appear up on our screens. I'll keep on talking. Q&A, it will happen. And if we don't quite get there, maybe I'm going to start with a question that I might come back to, so you can all think about this in the back of your heads, which is just, what decision do you wish you had made 5 years ago? I'll let you ponder that one whilst we're seeing some of these coming up here. That right now you think, if only I'd done that 5 years ago, because that's what I should have done, because these are the decisions that we need to be brave enough to be making now. Okay, we've got a great question that's just come up here. Let's take the first one. Oh, it's already disappeared. There we go. How do we really include human rights and indigenous communities' perspectives and participation in these new kinds of investments? And some of the conversations were hinting at those earlier, because having the buy-in of the people who these projects are going to affect. Maybe Abdallah, we'll turn to you first, and Mamadou, it'd be good to get your perspective on this too, because you mentioned this. Mamadou, how do you involve communities and indigenous people in the investments that you're making in your city?
Thank you. First, sometimes if I ask myself, what is a city? For a city, then in Africa, the definition of city, if you take the definition of city with the other first-class world countries, differ because we face different challenges, if you get my point. And what maybe you're asking me, what we have done to help?
Yeah, to engage the different communities.
Yes. Well,
in Dorasil.
Two things we did. The first thing we passed a law to stop the using of plastic bag. It was last 2 months, and now it is a law. And even if you are coming to Dar es Salaam now, you are not allowed to have that plastic bags. And also we did youth groups there around the Dar es Salaam city who are burning the waste to charcoal. Okay, that may be to reduce the waste around the street. Therefore, now we are encouraging, and there are groups, at least there are 3 groups of young people who are selling the charcoal made from the waste products, and it helps us. That 2 things maybe we read it within time to go together with the climate issues. And also, I'd like to share with you, we from Africa, sometimes, I know this is the forum for climate change. Sometimes we can think maybe we are not, the climate change problem there is not much like the big cities like New York and others, but we know that the problem is coming to us, and that we have to get prepared about what is coming, and that is good opportunity for us to start sharing ideas and attending the forum like this of climate change, and we are going back to tell our people to get prepared about the climate change problem. Although we are facing, but not much bigger compared to other cities, but we know, and we are continuing making awareness to our people to take care and to get prepared that if this challenge would be big, it means according to our economy of our countries and the cities, if we will face the big challenges of climate change, I'm not sure how will we survive. And the big countries now are crying and are suffering due to the climate change. And it is also my advice to my other leaders here, we must act and to fast the decisions. Although there's a challenge, I'm not sure if others are facing that challenge. There's a challenge of local government and the central government. We can plan this, and the local government, the main government, can have another plans. Sometimes I'm speaking this truly, so maybe I can hear from other cities what are they doing. It's a challenge. I'm not sure from Dakar, but in many African countries, the local municipalities and the central government, there are some contractions.
I think that's a common experience in probably every country that you would.
I'm not sure if in New York it is happening, because there.
I just want to also pass on and get Mamadou's perspectives on involving communities in decisions as well, because you're asking big questions here that we need to answer, but I want to make sure we're getting a variety of voices and that we get some questions asked as well. So if it's okay for me to...
Okay, thank you. I think I said two things we did. If you heard that we stopped the plastic bag and we encourage young people to recycle the waste into product. And the main product now, which is under the Dar es Salaam City Council, is the charcoal from the waste, and that the market for that charcoal is now rising. People are stopping using the charcoal from the firewood. They're starting using the charcoal made from the waste. And it is good. People are cooking by using that. Therefore, that's what. We did it soon in our time as a deputy mayor, and that's what we are mostly emphasizing people to use.
And that's a great innovation. And for those of you who are in one of the sessions this morning about that sort of circular economy and closing that loop and meeting the needs of people as well, so tackling problems and solutions. Mamadou, what's your sense about how you involve people, the communities, in your decision making? And how do you, maybe I can bring in another question from the screen there as well. How do you involve your communities and indigenous communities in helping to build up the pipeline of projects that need to happen in your city?
Merci. Vous savez, dans notre ville, les communautés autochtones sont partie intégrante de ce que nous faisons. Parce que
the indigenous communities in our city are an integral part of what we do.
Je vais donner 3 exemples pratiques.
I can give you 3 practical examples.
Le gouvernement du Sénégal, qui est très souvent en conflit avec notre ville,
the government of Senegal, that is often in a conflict with our city,
avait aménagé un bassin de rétention large comme 4 terrains de football pour accueillir les eaux pluviales.
They had made a water retention area the size of 4 football fields to hold back surplus water.
Les services du gouvernement ont connecté sur ce bassin le service des eaux usées de la ville.
And the government service were collecting water waste within this area.
Vous comprenez que les moustiques vont être là, les populations vont être malades. Et pour régler ça, la ville de Dakar est obligée de parler aux populations qui vivent autour de ce bassin.
Therefore, you can understand that there were mosquitoes, diseases, and so forth. So, therefore, the city of Dakar was forced to do something about the situation that was created.
Le deuxième niveau, c'est les infrastructures vertes qui permettent d'atténuer les changements climatiques, comme les forêts urbaines, les zones humides et les autres types, et les mares qui sont dans la ville de Dakar.
And the second element is the green infrastructure, such as municipal parks, planting of trees, and other green initiatives in the city.
Dans un parc de 80 hectares au cœur de Dakar, le gouvernement a aménagé plus de 20 hectares de bâtiments et édifices.
We have a park in the middle of the city that's about 80 hectares, and the city has set aside about 20 hectares to build some green buildings within that park.
De 80, c'est passé à 60 hectares et même moins, parce que tous les jours, il y a de nouvelles créations dedans.
And this area has been reduced because there are new constructions.
Et cette forêt urbaine est importante pour améliorer la qualité de l'air au niveau de Dakar.
But this urban forest is important to improve the quality of the air, for example, and general living conditions in Dakar.
Nous avons organisé les populations qui vivent autour de ce parc forestier. Nous avons organisé les sportifs qui pratiquent tous les jours le sport.
We've organized people who live around this park and those who use the park for different sport activities.
Pour régénérer ce parc, pour en faire un parc forestier, une infrastructure verte.
To work on improving this park and have a green infrastructure within this area.
Nous avons des mares à Dakar, plusieurs wetlands. Voilà.
We have several wetlands around Dakar.
Le plus grand fait 330 hectares.
The biggest one is 330 hectares.
Le gouvernement central est en train d'autoriser des parkings, des ventes de voitures, des industries dans cette zone qui permet de recevoir toutes les eaux pluviales de la ville de Dakar.
And the government is trying to construct parking areas, other buildings and that, in a wetland area that actually helps to hold back surplus rainfall.
Nous avons une autre forêt de 700 hectares où on a fait traverser par une autoroute et des rails.
We also have a forest that's 700 hectares where a highway and a railway has been built right through it.
Et une centrale à charbon est autorisée à l'entrée de la ville dans un pays qui a 365 jours de soleil.
And a coal plant has now been allowed to be built within the city area in a country that has sunshine for 365 days a year.
Le travail de la ville, c'est de sensibiliser ses citoyens sur l'impact négatif de tous ces aménagements dans leur santé de tous les jours, parce que c'est lié au changement climatique.
So the task for the city is to make people understand and make people aware about these negative effects of what's going on and what negative effect it will also have on the effects of climate change.
Le GIZ, grâce au C40, nous aide à régler le problème de bassin de rétention dans un quartier très populaire. Le C40, le C40 nous aide à financer, avec les ETZ, le bassin de rétention qui peut rendre malade, qui rend vulnérables les populations autour de ce bassin.
So the C40 is also helping us to finance a water retaining area that can help mitigate the damages that we get from floodings.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Nous avons besoin des mêmes financements pour la forêt et les zones humides.
And we need the same kind of funding for example, the forest and parks I mentioned before.
Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we're nearly out of time and we didn't get to all of your questions because actually this is a complex and interesting topic, and I'm sure if you want to follow up on some of these or other questions, Nick, Ellen, the other panel members will be around and you can ask them, and I'm sure we'll continue these. But we're going to end our session today with Susanne from the German government, from BMZ, and she's Head of Division for Urban Development, Water and Waste. Susanne. Yeah. Oh, you get music.
And an old picture, I'm afraid. But never mind, it's me. So I'm hopefully you don't expect from me that I summarize the discussion. I just want to pick up on some points where I think we have some convergence and maybe some food for thought from my side. I'm not comparing numbers, I only would, and in terms of kind of speed and sizes, I'm rather going on one number we haven't heard yet, which is related to the dynamic urbanization process, which is like that we will have an additional 1.6 million urban dwellers each week. I haven't really heard much about the more unfortunate segment of society. We're talking mainly about big cities' infrastructure, but we have a lot of people coming into cities and don't know where to live. And that also leads me to another point, that we have like 2/3 of the SDG, one being climate change, but we have some other SDGs as well to achieve, will be fulfilled in cities or achieved in cities. And as we heard on the panel, the developing countries are facing a much more different challenge than maybe already developed countries in cities, where they tweak a little, get the extra % out to become more resilient. But we have others that have to construct new infrastructure in their cities from scratch and having not much time for it and not the funding for it. And that drives me to my 3 points I want to make, which we have heard here on the panel. What is needed for this transformation, which I think we all agree have to speed up, is public funding. And public funding, I would include development finance that was mentioned, and public funding, which is local funding. And what I heard also, that we need a bit more vertical integration in local government, so that you will have the national and the local government working together, meaning that you have fiscal transfers, you have transfers of competencies and decision-making power at the local level. I'm a bit surprised that I've heard there seems to be a lot of, I mean, I'm aware of it in Germany too, but that there seems to be a bit of mistrust between the national and the local level. And I hope with this kind of more vertical integration approaches, we will overcome this mistrust. We had a whole conference in Heidelberg about this topic and countries signing declaration on vertical integration. And I hope that we can use a bit the momentum from the climate summit, where we had a whole action track on infrastructure and local action, the ICLA track, that we can use the momentum, because for the first time, I believe, we had cities and communes regions being represented at a climate summit at that scale, and having a whole track for that purpose. Then we need private flows, and you got me going with the private flows, and we can get probably engaged in a different discussion. But it's not only private flows in terms of investments in developed countries, but in developing countries. And here we often see that a mix of public and private finance, so-called blended finance, is needed. And I dare say, the problem is not the money. The money is there. Everybody's crying out money and make the investment. The bankable projects are lacking. And that's the major difficulties we face. You know, we have all the assets. Insurers have the assets they want to deploy in countries. We need the bankable project, and it's a really difficult thing to do for local governments as well as for development finance to work together. You need people that can do it. You have to travel to these local communities. You have to engage local communities. You have to adhere to ESG standards with a lot of people, integrate human rights aspects, which find a lot of people cumbersome. And I dare say that a lot of private investors, although they like to invest, they expect their return, and their level of return, the expectation, is often higher than these blended finance vehicles can accommodate. We do a lot of them. It's not wrong. That's what the endowment funds tell me. If you have more funding, if you expect a lower return, happy to accept it, you know. But I'm just saying, I hear this message often, and I'm happy to start on this discussion. And we have a couple of vehicles where the endowments expect a return because the interest rates are so low that they're looking for investment, which is the sound, particularly for development cooperation. But we also do see that the expectations are often too high, return expectations are too high. But I think we probably can have that discussion then to see how we can attract more private flows. I mean, that would be great. And I'm completely with you by saying we want to have the news in the FT and not in development cooperation news, but push the boundaries, getting into the mainstream investor. And maybe that brings me to one point in terms of linking capacities and project to investment. Maybe we have to look at a bit more on lost in translation, as you said, bringing the finance people together with the climate people. The issue being, what I noticed from my previous work, that when you talk about climate finance, as you don't finance climate, you finance households, you finance companies, and you finance governments in terms of making their investments through procurement. So it's just a different language. So your addressee is a different one. We should be very mindful of that one. Last but not least, I just like to highlight a few initiatives that were launched and ending on a very positive note. There are really interesting solutions out there, as we have heard from Dar es Salaam and Dakar, where we can, which we can scale and replicate in other countries. So basically we can, it's doable, but we have to fill certain gaps, for instance, for project preparation facilities, and we launched a few at the climate summit. For instance, the city's climate finance gap fund, also together with GCOM. And there we work with the cities and the city network so that they bring in the city proposals and their knowledge. We have CFF together with the British government, which has already some lessons learned. And the cooperation, hopefully, together with the city networks, can be pushed through the newly launched CCFLA, the City's Climate Finance Leadership Alliance, which was going to serve as a knowledge platform to replicate. And I also understand C40 has its knowledge platform and trying to combine with ICLE, with GCOM, a knowledge hub, because I think cooperation is really needed. There's so many useful project and lessons learned out there that can be fairly easily replicated in other countries and shared. And last but not least, I think what I take from this today discussion, maybe which we haven't really addressed enough, is the awareness raising within the local population. You said some of them understand, they feel the impact, but they don't really understand where it's coming from, the sources, and how to react to it. And that how we as a group can be fulfill more of an advocacy role politically after this summit, but also with local governments and development cooperation, how to address cities a bit more, because they don't have any particular kind of window in a lot of our partnerships, be it the NDC partnership or others. So we might want to think about how we take it from here, how we continue the discussion. Hopefully it wasn't too long now, sorry.
No. Thank you very much. I think that's a great note to end it on. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along today, for your questions, your engagement, and thank you very much to the panel here.